All right, we're going to be talking about letting go in relationships. If you are in a relationship right now and things aren't looking quite the way you think they should, if perhaps you're not showing up in a way that works best for the relationship, or like most of us, you're looking at the other person and going, you're not showing up for me the way I need you to. That happens sometimes also. Well, let's talk a little bit about this whole thing, but there's some foundational components for letting go that we need to address before we dive into how to really make this work. And so when you think about letting go in relationships, the essential component of that boils down to a couple of questions. And the first question is, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? What am I? What's my value in this relationship? What am I bringing to this relationship? So what is my value? What is my value in this relationship? What am I bringing to this relationship? And then the question is, how do I show up? How do I show up? Well, those are three questions that we have to be willing to ask and answer. And let's start with the first one. Who am I? Now you've heard about positive affirmations, right? But we're not here to create positive affirmations. That's not what this is about. This is about really being perfectly honest with yourself and drilling down and being transparent about who you are and what you are bringing to the relationship. So you can reverse this first question. Who am I? And say, I am who? In other words, you're going to use some statements like, I am adding value to this relationship. I am being authentic in how I deal with people. I am being generous. I am wonderful and I bring value to this relationship, and that value shows up in this way. So that's really what the I am statements are about. It's really about bringing your essence to the surface. The good stuff about you, bringing that essence to the surface. That's really what the I am statement is all about. So who am I? You can reverse that question and ask and create a statement. I am who? And then filling in the gap with the word who, with some adjectives that describe who you are as a person. Why is this important? Because when you come into a relationship, you are bringing yourself, your best self. You should want to bring your best self into that relationship. As you bring that best self into that relationship, you have to understand who you are in terms of you bringing that best self to that relationship. So that's why this is really important. If you don't understand who you are, then it's going to make it really difficult to understand what your value is. And so the same thing is true with this second statement. What is my value? You can reverse that and say my value is, and create somewhat of a proposition. So for every relationship that you have, what is your value? What's your value proposition? What are you bringing to that relationship? That's really important to be able to identify as well. So who am I? And what am I bringing? Right? And so if you can't identify, or if you're not bringing value to the relationship, value in a way that uplifts you, value in a way that uplifts the other person or individuals in the relationships that you are attempting to continue to have. If you can't figure out how your value adds to the growth and the positivity of that relationship, then there's something there to really take a look at. And then that third question is, how do I show up? We can do the same thing with this question as we did with the other two. I show up how? So how do I show up? Am I showing up in a way that also adds value to the relationship? Am I showing up in a way that represents who I am? Am I showing up in this relationship in a way that's going to really allow for us to have open, honest, genuine dialogue with each other? Am I showing up in a way that really allows me? And when I say showing up, I'm not talking about how you dress, although that's important. I'm not talking about whether or not you washed your face this morning or brushed your teeth, although those are things that are important too. I'm really talking more about how you show up on the inside, that inside out value, that inside out who-ness that you bring to this relationship. Who-ness isn't a real word. Who-ness is a Darrenism. But that inside out who-ness that you're bringing to that relationship, that's really the most important piece. So these three questions are really important questions for you to ask yourself and to answer. So here's what I recommend. Let's get into some activities. I want you to take a second now and answer this question. Let's flip it. Who am I in this relationship? Well, I am who in this relationship? Take a second and write down 2 or 3 words that represent who you are, your who-ness, and how you and what you're bringing to this relationship in terms of your who-ness. So take a second and finish that statement. I am ... I am who? I'm not going to give you any examples because I want you to pull from what's inside of your heart and soul, what's inside of your mind about who you are. So take a second and do that. I'm going to pause while you go ahead and do that. You just need a couple of words just to get the ball rolling for this activity. But I'm a big proponent of journaling, and I think that if you have a journal, you might want to use the journal, your journal for this activity, right? On a fresh page. Who am I in this relationship? And then flip it. I am who? And then replace the word who with your adjectives to describe who you are. Pausing for you to do that. Then we'll come back. All right. What is my value? What am I bringing to this relationship? So reverse that question with my value is, and then whatever you think you're bringing to this relationship, whatever that value is, then replace that with that so that you can understand fully how you're contributing to the relationship. Whatever that, and it could be a friendship. It could be someone that, and I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, but it could be someone that you've known for many, many years. And when you realize that you're not bringing value or you can't bring value, sometimes there's decisions that you have to make. And I'm chomping at the bit to get to that piece, but we'll get there in a minute. So I want you to take a second. I'm going to pause while you finish that statement. My value in this relationship is. Pause. Knock that out. And then how do I show up? How do I show up? I show up how? Replace the word how with how you show up. Do you show up bringing good value? Do you show up where you're representing who you are in this relationship? How are you showing up? And how does that work? And how is that working for you in terms of that relationship relative to how you're showing up? That's important as well. Now, I would love to hear from you. What are your comments? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about this part of this particular lesson? And this lesson is really a lesson about letting go in relationships. As you know, or you may know, I'm doing a series on YouTube around letting go in relationships. And this is part of that series. But this is really basic information that a lot of us read about. We know that it's something that we should do. But if you really, and when you really begin to take the time to drill down and look at who you are, what value you're bringing, and how you show up, those three things, and focus on that in a way that represents the best of you, then that's how you're able to eventually begin to move towards letting go. Now let's talk a little bit about how this connects to letting go. Part of letting go is being able to focus on what you can control, right? Part of that process is understanding, what can I control in this relationship? The only thing you can control in any relationship, whether it's with your children, your significant other, a friend, co-workers, it doesn't matter. The one thing that you control is how you show up, who you are, what value you bring to that relationship, and how you react and respond or proactively approach that relationship. Those are the three things that you control. Although it may feel like sometimes that someone else is controlling how you show up, the truth is only you control this. Even if it feels like someone else is doing this. I used to use this example years ago when I would do speeches on how to let go in relationships. I would talk about, and I still do, talk about how we sometimes have a remote control. Think about this as in terms of a remote control. So if you have a remote control, you look at the buttons on that remote control. Think about this remote control as who you are. This remote control has all the buttons on it that represent who you are. And when you show up in a relationship, you're showing up as, I am so-and-so, who I am. And when you show up in that way, there are buttons on that remote control that you are pushing. And so there's a button for I am authentic. There's a button for I am genuine. There's a button for I am honest. There's a button for I feel good about myself. There's a button for I am here to represent my family. There's a button for every way that you can show up and who you are as you show up. And so you're pushing those buttons in a way that allow you to represent whatever that is. Well, sometimes we give our attitudinal remote control to someone else. And in doing so, we're giving them control over us, and they're able to push our buttons. You ever heard the expression, don't let them push your buttons? So sometimes we push our buttons, we let other people push our buttons. And when they show up with our remote control because we've given it to them, and they're dictating who we are. They're dictating what value we bring because they're buttons on this remote control for all three of these. And if you give your remote control to someone else, guess what? Then you're giving them control over how you show up, what value you bring, and how you show up. So hold on to that attitudinal remote control in a way that allows you to push those buttons, and only you. Don't give control of how you show up and who you are and what value you bring to someone else. And so here's an example of how that might work. You walk into a meeting, maybe you're a little late for a meeting, and you show up, and someone in the meeting says, you're late. And that statement, because they're stating the obvious, actually might cause you to feel like you want to get back at this person at some point. And the first opportunity you have to say something to them that gets back for the fact that they pointed out that you were late when you first walked in, you take that opportunity or not. That first opportunity you have to do something, maybe you uplift them. Maybe you thank them for pointing it out rather than getting perturbed, rather than reacting in what they might want you, in a way that they may want you to react. So think about that for a minute. The next time you are showing up in a relationship, you hold on to that remote control. I don't have a remote control in my hand to show you right now, but if I did, you just have to use your imagination. There is a remote control here and you're pushing those buttons, right? So something to think about, something to seriously think about, right? The other thing about um, letting go in relationships is that it is really important for us to be able to determine the value that that relationship brings to our life, right? So if you're involved with someone and in a relationship, friendship, coworker, whatever it might be, you have to decide the value that that relationship brings to you. And so, what value does that relationship bring for you in your life? Is it adding value to you or not? That's really important for you to decide. And depending upon the level of value, let's say on a scale from 1 to 5, you have to decide no value at all or great value in terms of this relationship, right? And so once you've made that determination, the next thing that you have to ask yourself is this relationship positive in my life? Is it positive? Is it adding value to my life? So we're flipping this now. It's not only about how you show up and what value you bring. It's not only about how you show up, but it's also about how the other person shows up and the value that they are bringing to your relationship, right? To you as a person as well. And so, how positive are they in my life? Or perhaps they have a zero effect. They're not positive, they're not negative, they're just kind of there in your life. And then on the flip side of that, how toxic are they in my life? Do they add toxicity to my day-to-day life? And what that looks like is when I'm dealing with you, do you make me feel good at the end of that interaction? Do you make me feel uplifted? Do I feel empowered? Or am I walking away feeling hurt, angry, in wonderment? Am I walking away feeling like I'm less than what I was when I first entered the relationship or that conversation? My value has dwindled. Am I walking away feeling these things? Or am I walking away feeling empowered, enlightened, inspired, motivated, happy? So only you can answer those questions. But if you're walking away from a relationship consistently and you're feeling devalued, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling physiologically moved in a negative way by that relationship, then guess what? And it's happening on a consistent basis, or there are ebbs and flows on a consistent basis over time, then guess what? That's probably not the relationship you need to be in. Now, we convince ourselves very well, by the way, that it is important for us to be in a relationship in which toxicity prevails. And as a result, we get impacted by this in a negative way. It shows up in how we feel about ourselves. It shows up in how we, in the value that we bring in the relationship. It shows up in who we are as well, because it causes us to question the authenticity, the genuineness that we bring to the table. Whenever you're in a relationship where someone is causing you to question who you are in a negative way, not in a constructive way, but in a destructive way, then you need to get out of that relationship. You have to make some hard decisions about that relationship. Now, there's a scale, so you can, and how do you know? So you can measure this, and you can actually say, on a scale from 1, I like to use 10. a 10 Likert scale from 1 to 10. A lot of people like to use 7 or 5. And I used 5 up here, but my preference is a 10 for this kind of thing. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is negative, really negative, and then 10 is extremely, absolutely over the top positive. Where is that person in your life? Are they positive? Are they providing you with positive support? Are they providing you with what you need to feel good about the relationship? Not to feel good about yourself, but to feel good about the relationship, which ultimately helps you to feel better about yourself. But are they providing you with that? What kind of value are they bringing to you? And then in terms of 0, so from 1 to 10, where are they in terms of being neutral in your life? Do they add nothing? So 10 is they add absolutely, positively nothing to my life. I'm sorry, 1 is they provide absolutely, positively nothing in my life. And then 10 is that they are bringing value on a regular basis. Not necessarily, may not be positive, may not be negative, but they're there for you. It may be quiet. It could be the person that sits on the sofa and stays there all day long, but they're there. They're there for you. And so that's what this 0 is. And then for toxicity, it's the same thing. That scale is the same. From 1 to 10, where is this person on that toxic scale? Are they not toxic at all? 1. Or are they off the chart with toxicity? So you have to decide where they are. This gives you a measurable approach to determining if this relationship is going to provide you with the value that you need moving forward, is going to be a benefit to you. Now, on the flip side, you have to also ask yourself the same questions about how you're showing up. Am I showing up positively? Or do I have a 0 effect on this relationship? Or am I being toxic in this relationship? Only you know the answer to those questions, but this gives you an opportunity to measure. And so how does this connect with letting go in relationships? It helps you to know whether or not this is a relationship that you need to continue to try to forge as you move ahead with your life. Should you stay in this, or do you let it go? And so this is a way to measure. Now, there's a lot more that comes with this. There's the communication. There is being honest and sincere with yourself. There's having that communicative conversation with the person that you're in that relationship with. All of that is also part of you creating a plan to decide if this relationship is something that you should hold on to or let go of as you move forward. And so how do I manage that relationship in my life? How do I let that person's energy enter into my life on a day-to-day basis? Those are other questions that you have to answer. And you should do this for every single relationship that you have that you consider to be a relationship with someone who's close to you. Now, I'll tell you a story. I'm over 50 years old, and I had to recently let go of a relationship with someone that I've known for over 50 years. It was really difficult, but I've noticed, and I went back and I began to ask myself these same questions. And this person is someone that I've known since middle school in my life. And we actually were boyfriend and girlfriend for a second there. And so I noticed a cycle that was happening. And the cycle was that we'd be very positive with each other. And then all of a sudden, this person would go blank. They would go, what's the word I would use? They would go silent sometimes for years. And then when they showed up, it was toxic. And it was like a cycle of fake positivity nothing at all, and then toxicity. And every single time that we would reconnect over the years, there was that cycle that was there. Now, I made sure that I was showing up and I was bringing value and I was being positive when I showed up. And I know who I am. I'm not perfect, but in this situation, I knew how I was showing up. And when I began to track the cycle that this person was bringing to the table every time we would reconnect. And when I say reconnect, I'm just saying platonically, when we would come together and catch up with each other. How's it going? And we would stay in touch. We talk, well, what's going on in your life? Well, what's happening in your life? That kind of thing. When we would have those conversations, it would start out superficially positive, and then it would be no contact. And then when there was contact, it was extremely toxic, and it was just this continuous cycle. So I finally decided, you know what? I don't need that in my life. I don't need to have that. So I actually had the conversation, so the communication, had a conversation with that person and let that person know that this is not working for me, that I love this person. I've known this person for over 50 years, and I cherish and appreciate the years that we have known each other and been friends. However, at this point in my life, I don't want to continue with that negative, superficially positive, no showing up at all. And then when you do show up, it's very toxic. And I gave specific examples of how that had affected our relationship and the impact that it had on me. And I finally said, I have to let this go. You know why? Because I deserve better. Even though there's a part of me in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, you've known this person for over 50 years. You can't let this person go. But guess what? I had to let them go. Had to make that shift, that's had to step away from that relationship. And it was very difficult. It was like the loss of someone that you've known since 7th grade or 8th grade. And so it is very, very important when you decide to let go of a relationship that you funeralize that relationship. Funeralize it, not in terms of having an actual event, but that in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, you close that chapter and you consciously choose to let that go. Because when you do that, it creates space for you to have new, more fulfilling relationships in your life, or the space for you to have that time to be positive and uplift yourself. That's really important over time. But what you don't want to do is continue that cycle with that person and convince yourself that because you've known this person for many, many years, that you feel compelled to make it work. I'm going to stay with this. I did that for a long time and finally realized that I was devaluing myself in the process. And so that's what letting go looks like in real life. And I actually went through this process. When I looked at that relationship, I had to make that decision. Now, this is a very recent decision I made. So this happened within the last 30 to 45 days. And it took me some time. I had to walk along the beach a couple of days just to process and allow that feeling when you're walking along the beach. I don't know if you've experienced that, but when I walk along the beach and I see the ocean that rolls onto the shore in front of me and covers my feet and then rolls away, and how it really cleanses and creates this really nice renewed look on the sand every time it rolls in and rolls away. I had to do the same thing with my feelings, my soul, my spirit, after I made the decision in this relationship to let go. I had to let the ocean guide me in the process. Anyway, that's something that works best for me. Whatever works for you, in terms of your ability to focus on who you are, the value that you bring, and how you show up. That's what you need to do. But first, you've got to be honest with yourself and ask yourself some really hard questions. Now, I've done workshops like this in the past where I've had people identify family members as people that were superficially positive, had no effect, and then when they did have an effect, it was toxic. And so they had to decide how they want to manage those relationships. Before you decide how you want to manage it, before you tell anyone that you're going through this process, when you look at the relationship, you have to be clear on what you're bringing to on what you're bringing to that relationship. You have to be clear on how you're showing up in that relationship. You have to be clear on the value that you're bringing to that relationship, and make sure that you are not providing superficial positivity, nothingness, and then toxicity along the way. And that's really important, because if you're contributing to this, then, and sometimes we do in relationships, and that makes it that much more difficult to make this. It can come across as more of a self-righteous act than an act of letting go. So be real clear on what you're bringing to the table before you make a decision about a relationship. And so, and the measuring of this, the measurements allow you, and if you need to review this, just rewind the video. But the measuring of this makes it a very powerful tool for you to gauge that relationship in your life. Now, if it's someone in your family, that's a hard one, but you can do it. You can do it. If it's someone at work, it's a little bit less complicated, although sometimes your work relationships, those are people that you have to work with on a regular basis, and oftentimes that's a difficult conversation to have, if you even have it at all at work, because there's so many other dynamics around your work relationships. There's the politics around it. There's being politically correct. There's what terminology do you use? There's, whether or not the person that is toxic at work could be your manager or your supervisor, or it could be someone that you're working on a project with that you have to see every single day. So how do you have to think through that kind of conversation, and you have to make sure that you're showing up in a way that is going to be in the best interest of that relationship, and that you're consistently, genuinely looking for ways to make that relationship better. And so there's so much more that goes into this that we'll be talking about in the next series of videos. But for today, I just want to, and I'm looking down at this. I keep looking at the marker. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm looking at the marker, y'all, but I'm looking at the marker as I talk. Maybe like this is going to help me think better. Help me find the words that I need to be able to articulate to you. But I hope that this was helpful. I'm going to jump off now, but I want you to see the series and take a look at some of the other videos. There's another video that I'll put up, is on the screen right here. And that video really speaks to how we actually manage toxic relationships, and it offers 3 steps for managing toxic relationships. So that's a video that I think is really important for you to take a look at as well. And there'll be others in this series as I move forward. But I'm excited about the message for today. This was beneficial. Hey, I helped myself, but I hope that there was something here that was helpful for you as well as you move forward. And until next time, take care of yourself.